Hi everyone, it's Heidi with Downtown NorCal, and today we're meeting with Megan Likes. She is the owner of Megan Likes Accounting Company. Megan is an expert in small business funding and all of the relief packages that are out there, so please welcome her. Hi Megan.
Hi Heidi, nice to see you again. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for coming.
I
So,
love how you planned today. Like you nailed the timing of today.
well,
I,
let's
yeah.
start there. Tell us about what is special about this day.
Well, today is the first day that most local businesses that you help and support will be eligible for applying for a second round of PPP funding. They technically opened the program last week in two different waves, but as far as I know, and I may be mistaken, but most of the banks that I work closely with locally were not participating until today. So today was the day, the magical day where round two of PPP funding has been reopened, and it's been a big day because the SBA has already changed the rules once since this morning. So it's fun, constantly new information. But today's a big day because if you want, I can go into who would be eligible for that round of PPP funding.
Yeah, so we're actually referring to this as PPP. So this is a continuation of what was passed in the spring. So how much is the current package worth? And you mentioned that it starts today, and basically who qualifies?
Ooh, that's a great question. How much is it worth? I'm
Okay.
not sure.
Let's start with who qualifies.
Okay, yeah, I have quite a few things up here. It was part of the package that was passed in December, but I'm not sure off the top of my head how much. It's basically what was left over in August of 2019. So there was already funds that had been appropriated for this, and they were left over on August 8th. And so that leftover amount is what is available now. In terms of who qualifies, those small business owners who have less than 300 employees and who have experienced economic impact due to COVID. And that economic impact has been defined in this round as your gross revenue, so the total income that you receive in your business being impacted by 25% or more, so being down 25% or more in any quarter of 2020. So if that was quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, or quarter four, it doesn't matter which one, any of those quarters compared to the exact same quarter in the previous year. So for a lot of the small businesses that I've been helping over the past 2 weeks, quarter two was the biggest hit. So they were mostly in shutdown, had very little opportunity to earn income. And we compared quarter two of 2020 to quarter two of 2019. And if the difference in the income that they brought in the door was 25% or more, and it keeps struggling like the more or less. So it has to be like down 25% or what do we say, or less, or like 30% or 35%. I keep struggling about this, but 25%, I'm going to say more, but you know what I mean, a negative number, then you would be eligible for applying. Now, if you are a small business owner out there who does not use QuickBooks Online or who does not really have good tracking of your income and expenses, I hope that COVID has been a lesson in doing that. Now is the time to start tracking it. But the SBA realizes, you are trying to run a business, you've been trying to survive a pandemic. So if you don't have good records by quarter of what your income is, you can actually use the entire year. So if you know that all of 2020 was down 25% or more compared to 2019, then you can use that to apply. But ideally, you'd have numbers by quarter or by month, and you'd be able to tell which quarter was impacted and by how much.
Okay. Are there any restrictions with regard to people who got the first round? Are they prohibited from applying for the second? And then
Nope.
again, the same question applies to those who didn't participate in the first round or who were not successful in the first round and would like to apply for this one.
Yep. So if you got a first round PPP, you're eligible for the second round PPP. The only criteria is that you have to have used all the funds. So you can't have gotten the money and then not used the funds, which I don't know of any business who got a first. I'm not to say maybe you're out there, but most of the people that got the first round of PPP, they used all the funds. So that's the criteria. You do not have to have had applied for or already received forgiveness. So there was a lot of misinformation about a week ago about that. That's not true. You just have to meet those other criteria about less than 300 employees and a 25% reduction in income. If you did not apply for a first round PPP, they've actually reopened it. So you can apply for a first round PPP and a second round PPP. I haven't seen any companies, because today's the first day, actually successfully apply for both at the same time, but that's a possibility. Like if you missed the boat from April to August and you really were kind of kicking yourself like, oh, it turns out I might have been eligible and I just didn't have my numbers in order, I didn't understand, you can, it's not too late, you can still apply. The only exception that I've seen in writing from the SBA is if you applied for a first round PPP and you were denied, or it's been like contested, or you've been negotiating with the SBA about getting that first round. Like I know a lot of small businesses, this happened with the EIDL loans. But if that happened to you with your first round of PPP, then you will not be eligible for a second round. Like if your first round is still like holding or was denied, you may not be eligible for a second round. But the SBA said today, and Jeff and I bank with First Northern Bank. We love them. They've been fantastic through all this. And they sent a really helpful email today that kind of quoted the SBA, and the SBA, I actually have it up because it's really cute, but they said, the SBA said that they're going to resolve issues related to unresolved borrowers expeditiously. So let's hope that's true.
Gotta love the local banks. I want to back up to something you mentioned about folks who may not have spent all of the original PPP. If they have plans to do so, does that help them qualify for the second round?
I think that they'll have to wait. I think they'll have to wait till they have. So, and a reminder about the first round of PPP funding, eligible expenses were payroll. If you were a self-employed individual as a sole proprietor, that included owner's draws, utilities, rent, health insurance premiums. Under this new round, under this, and it's kind of hard to call it a second round because technically this is the third round of PPP funding, but I'm seeing it mentioned in the news and in the press as the second round, so I'm kind of adopting that. But yes, I realize that this has been opened 3 times now. I have been very, very involved in all 3 of the rounds, taken up many years of my, no, weeks of my life, feels like years of my life. So this new round, they're also including other things like the costs of PPE. So for your staff, they're including things like the cost of accounting fees to help you do all of this so that you have accurate books. They're including the cost of software subscriptions. So they've expanded it in the second round to what would be eligible as an expense. But a great rule of thumb is still 60% to be used on payroll and 40% to be used on these other expenses.
Okay. Are owner's draws considered payroll?
For sole proprietors, they are.
Okay. Then
and single member LLCs.
Okay.
In the context of PPP, not in any other normal context, but in the context of PPP, they are.
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you. So I understand there is some emphasis in this new round on businesses under 10. So when I talk about small businesses, I think people imagine that kind of a business as opposed to this, 300 kind of person shop. So can you talk about that?
I haven't read that. I haven't seen that. I personally, I believe that to be true. Like the typical client that I serve has between 1 and 50 employees. So that to me is like the core of small business, but it's funny. There are other definitions that define it like 50 or 250 or 500 or, and I'm like, okay, well, I deal with this really small section, which are kind of like the Main Street businesses that I think you support too, Heidi. Yeah. So I haven't seen the focus on the less than 10, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye out for that. On the same line, the last PPP was criticized in the news for not getting enough funds to businesses owned by people of color. Do you have anything known about that?
Yeah, I can tell that the SBA is trying to do it better this time. And I think they're really trying to do it better. It will be interesting in a week or so from now, the success of those efforts. What they did was they opened it up to minority-owned businesses last I'm sorry, my days are blurring. It might have been last Monday or maybe it was last Tuesday. The problem was the way they regulated it was they only offered it to those businesses through community financial institutions. And there wasn't a lot of information out there about who is a community financial institution and how would you apply if you were a minority owned business through a community financial institution. So I feel like they missed the mark a little bit last week, and it felt more like on paper they wanted to say we're gonna share access here, right? And then it also felt like it was just their soft trial opening, right? So they had fewer borrowers and it was easier for them to sort out their systems. And that, I think that my case was kind of made when today they released new regulations, because I'm like, well, the program's been open for a week, so I don't know why these new regulations are coming out now. I will be interested. Another difference that's happening this round, and I think this is SBA really trying to be inclusive and really trying to make an effort to include everybody. This round, they are not giving SBA loan numbers immediately. So, and I know I just said this is the second round, but I'm going to back up. So in the first round, what happened was major banks who had tons of funding were able to write software to push applications through the SBA system. What happened in the second round is SBA said that wasn't fair because that wasn't an inclusive practice for those who don't bank at major banks. So they started limiting the number of applications per day that could be submitted per institution. So that kind of evened the playing field. And I think they're taking it one step further in this round. And they're saying just because you're pushing an application through doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to accept the application. And a lot of people didn't realize that's what the process is. So you apply at your bank, and your bank submits your application to the SBA, and the SBA sends your bank back an SBA loan number, and then you as the owner of the business hear that you have been granted a PPP loan application. And that was a pretty automatic process during the first two rounds. And it was basically just like a mad dash of who could get the most applications in as quickly as possible. And so SBA seems to be changing it. I'll be curious if we get to see these minority-owned businesses getting preferences for SBA loan numbers. I think that would be awesome, because then that would tell me that SBA is truly trying to make this more inclusive this round. But so far, the guidance I'm seeing is them regulating it by the banks that are able to submit the applications. And I have a couple of minority-owned businesses that I help locally, and I'm like, well, I mean, did anybody reach out to you saying like, I'm a community financial institution, apply, like we were missing that information about where to go apply last week.
Mm-hmm. On the same line, you're mentioning big banks and other sources. So anecdotally, I heard a lot of stories about folks who were engaged with big banks not being very successful getting the first round or the second round. And those who had relationships with small banks, for example, First Northern, you mentioned a River City Bank locally, having a lot of success. So, what are the sources for these loans, and how would you recommend people going forward this time?
Well, so one other problem we're having is that finding access to a lending institution that will write a PPP loan for you. So what we saw in first and second round, and not to bash on big banks, but is that, Wells Fargo was, I think they had the worst reputation through first and second round. And they did not take care of their borrowers. And those Wells Fargo long-term clients had a hard time finding another bank that would write a PPP loan for them. So in First Northern's case, and I can only speak to them because that's where my husband and I bank, but they've been amazing. And so they actually wrote software, a small bank writing software, to do the second round application form. It's better than some of the big bank applications that I've seen today. And they really said you just need to be a customer of ours. And so with this round, what First Northern's saying is if you open a checking account, then we'll make it available to you. So if you have a big bank and you've struggled getting in, I have not heard anything about Wells Fargo or Bank of America yet today, because I think most of the people I helped, they had to jump ship and go somewhere else. But Chase, I know Chase was available for accepting applications, but they only had a wait list as of noon today. So they still weren't even taking the full application. So I encourage you to talk to a small bank. I think that I saw a lot of business owners start transitioning their business to smaller banks because you just have better customer service and sometimes better resources. Alternatively, there were two online lenders that did exceptionally well who kind of picked up the pieces from Bank of America and Wells Fargo. And I was very nervous last night up until this morning because I had a lot of clients who were successful with PayPal. So PayPal did first round PPPs and have been really good through the forgiveness process and all of that, but they weren't announcing whether they were going to participate in the second round until this morning. And they did open their application this morning. So you can apply for a second round PPP through PayPal. The other one that I don't have personal experience from, but I have heard anecdotally from other clients is Bluevine. So these are both online applications that can be done. But I think my preference is develop a relationship with a local bank who's done this successfully, move quickly, and then apply for the PPP through them. And not that this is a commercial or plug for First Northern, but I was very impressed with their online portal. And I was impressed with how quickly they had it up. They had it up on a Friday morning, maybe even Thursday night. So a lot of my clients had time to get it all together this weekend before today's deadline.
It's good news. Can we talk about forgiveness with both the old and the new?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been saying for months, and my clients are getting very annoyed with me, but that we should hold off on applying for forgiveness. And I was really nervous in December because, well, okay, let's go back to August and September mainly. We were trying to get this negotiation between Democrats and Republicans, the House and the Senate, to have some sort of relief package passed. And there were so many murmurings from bank lobbyists and from big banks and from the AICPA and all of these other names that I really respect, saying the forgiveness process is unfair to small businesses. This is unfair to ask them to do when they are fighting for their lives, for their families' lives, for their businesses' lives. This process is just dumb, basically, and you shouldn't make them do it. And they were defining small businesses as loans less than $150,000. And so there was all this murmuring coming out of Washington, D.C. that the forgiveness process was going to be revamped. A lot of people were saying it was going to be taken away, where if you had a loan for less than $150,000, it would be blanket forgiven. And then we had the election. And so we didn't hear murmurings anymore. And then in December, those murmurings started coming back louder. And as many people know, we did pass another round of stimulus at the end of December. And then that was kind of interesting because we had to make it through Christmas and the president hadn't signed it yet. But he finally signed it on December 27th. And so we had some really good information released about what was going to happen with forgiveness. So the new information is that if your original loan was $150,000 or less, and you used those proceeds for intended use, so the 60% threshold to payroll, 40% to other expenses that were really well defined in a covered period, so we went from an 8-week period to a 24-week period, then it was just supposed to be a one-page forgiveness application form. Now, what we've noticed since December 27th is the SBA was given, and I have so many numbers floating in my head, especially in January, I'm like trying to forget all 2020 numbers and learn new 2021 numbers. So I'm sorry, it was either like 21 days or 24 days, but the SBA was given essentially about 3 weeks from December 27th to decide how are we going to go about this new simplified forgiveness process for loans $150,000 or less. They still have not released that guidance because they're still within that period. And I'm recommending to wait until that guidance is released and then to wait until the banks have time to revamp their standard operating procedures. Because what we saw happen was we've actually had the one-page forgiveness form for several months, but the banks, because of their underwriters and because of their risk tolerance, they were still asking for mountains of paperwork to support that one-page forgiveness application form. So what I'm hoping to happen, and I don't know for sure, but what I'm hoping will happen is come the end of January, when SBA says, this is how we do the simplified forgiveness process, the banks say, okay, are you sure? And SBA says, yes, we're sure. And then the banks change their process. And hopefully for my small business clients and your small business friends, Heidi, that process will be much more simplified with a one-page form come Feb, February. Now, my clients say I've been saying come next month since August. So I told them that in February, I might say I'm too busy with taxes and I might change my answer to May. The reality is there's no deadline to apply for forgiveness. So that was a huge hot topic. Everybody was stressed out. There was a lot of misinformation that it was the end of the year that you had to apply for forgiveness. That is not true. What you're working against is you would like to have your loan forgiven before it becomes due. So you don't want to be making payments on a loan that you're not going to have to make payments on. So for most people, like by summer is when you should really be applying for that forgiveness. Along that vein, and I always feel like I'm talking in a monologue, Heidi, and I like what you have to say, so I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say one more comment along that vein, and that is that on December 27th, we also got a huge gift in that stimulus package, and that was clarity and guidance about what happens to your PPP funds from the first round. So we knew from day one that they would not be taxable on your federal tax return. That was great. We did not know in California until September whether they would be California taxable income. We found out California said we're not going to tax it either. Great. But up until December 27th, all of my tax projections in December added it back to my net income for my small business clients because we thought that we were not going to be able to deduct any of those expenses that were paid for with PPP funds. And on December 27th, they gave us the clarity that said you will be able to deduct it. So that makes the PPP from round one free money. And I am a CPA who is incredibly conservative and I never say free money, but this was legitimately free money. And we don't have any reason to believe that round two will not be exactly the same. In fact, we're feeling like they're making the forgiveness process easier. It's only going to get better and round two will follow the same guidelines. So as long as you're using it for approved funds, don't be the guy in Florida who bought the Lamborghini, be sure that you're using it correctly. But you're going to be able to deduct it on your taxes and it should be forgivable and it should be relatively easy.
See, if I let you talk long enough, I don't have to ask so many questions. So I love that about it.
Okay,
also,
good.
Perhaps we'll have the one form when we get the vaccines going. Anyway, to the arts, that's been an issue. While not small businesses, a lot of them are not for profits, but I understand that there is some value and benefit in this latest round to arts programs like performing arts theaters that are really struggling. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so I haven't seen anything specifically for arts programs. As an art appreciator, I definitely keep my eye out for that. But what I have seen is that there's a new program called a Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. And the SV is very excited about this. I do not know very much information about this aside from it passed on December 27th as well, and it's brand new. So if you have a live venue, if you are a museum operator or a theatrical producer or a live performing arts organization or a talent representative or a motion picture theater operator, then I encourage you to go check this out. Again, it's called the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, and it's a totally separate program from PPP, and it's brand new. It just passed December 27th.
Okay, that's great news. I've been really worried about them, and I want to get them on my show as soon as possible. EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, what's new there?
It's open again, which is awesome. They found more money, which is great. So if you've been economically impacted by COVID in your business, I encourage you to look into this program. Now, it's a loan. It's very different than the PPP because the PPP, the idea is it's a forgivable loan, which essentially makes it a grant. The EIDL is a loan, but it's a very long-term loan. It's a 30-year loan, and it's at a relatively low interest rate. It's at 3.75% if you, hang on. Yeah, if you're a for-profit business and it's at 2.75% if you're a nonprofit. So it's a relatively low interest rate for a very long period of time, and it can be used for any operating expenses or working capital. So unlike PPP that's very closely tied to payroll, the EIDL loan you do have access to. The program started in March. Well, I mean, this program, so economic disaster loans have been around for decades. But the COVID-19 economic injury disaster loan really started in March, and they had an advance component. So there was this, like we called it the EIDL grant, and that has been closed. So there are no more grant portions of the EIDL program, but the EIDL loan itself is reopened. there is not a lot of information about how much the loan would be. Everything that they thought that it would be is not how it turned out. So in my personal experience, and I haven't helped with an EIDL loan in a couple of months, but my personal experience is those were being capped at $150,000. Even though if you look it up, it says that it gets capped at 2 million. I had many businesses that were eligible for more that did not get it. So they were just trying to spread it around as best they could. So I think it's capped at $150,000. How they determine how much you're eligible for is they've been taking 2 to 3 months of your operating expenses. So during that loan application process, you will share all of your tax documents and your profit and losses and your driver's license, all of those things, and they will calculate a loan amount that they will offer you. And my best guess, educated guess, but guess is that it's about 2 to 3 months of operating expenses. And it's up to you if you want to accept all the loan that they offer you. I had some clients who they got the whole 150 and they were like, I don't need that, but it's nice to know that I have access to working capital if I need it. It's not free money, it's a loan, but it's a long-term loan. And it's a relatively easy program to apply with. Unlike the PPP that you apply directly with your bank, the EIDL loans you apply directly with SBA. So there's an SBA website. Just like any of these things, they're ripe for fraud and scams. So be very careful that you go to the right place to apply for the program you're trying to apply for. But SBA.gov has an EIDL program that I encourage you to look into if you're struggling with capital and with cash. My only other warning is we are all hurting and things are still kind of uncertain. So when you are taking out a loan, make sure that you've trimmed as much fat as you can, that you are running as lean of an operation as you can, and that money, you have a plan for, like, it's supposed to be a bridge loan. Like, it's going to get you from point A to point B so that you can continue all the way to point Z. So make sure you have a plan for, like, when do you stop using the money? Very early on in the pandemic, I saw a lot of businesses kind of just using it to fill in the gaps, and we had to stop and say, okay, so that business is gone. Here's the new business. What are the true gaps that are left?
Okay. The California Relief Grant, let's go there if we could.
Yeah, so the California Relief Grant was really kind of a surprise. I mean, it shouldn't have been because I think we heard about it in November, but then the holidays happened and everything else happened. So it opened up, I think on January 1st or something. And it closed on January 13th. So last week I met with pretty much all of my bookkeeping clients and we went through this California Relief Grant program. And it was a relatively simple application. They, I think, learned a lot of lessons from the SBA. They definitely have made it clear that they will give priority to minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses. And they're not being very transparent about what would help you qualify for this loan program. So I think that California has an agenda of the types of businesses they'd like to help. And they're offering that help through this relief grant program. So if you applied before the deadline of January 13th, they're saying that you will hear the status for your application between January 15th and January 22nd. So I had a meeting today and the small business owner was like, has anybody heard anything yet? And I said, no, but that's not unusual. They have committed that we will hear by Friday, whether you'll be moving on to the next round of that grant application. Now, if you missed the application period and you were not able to apply, an interesting thing about this program is they've been clear from day one that there will be a second round. So the second round will open at 8 a.m. on February 2nd, and it will run through February 8th. So you will have a chance to apply again. If you were denied during the first round, you will automatically be eligible to go again in the second round. So they're prioritizing the funding that they have available. And if I remember correctly, it's 500 million. And the last thing I read was there were 300,000 small businesses that applied for this. So that you know what you're applying for, it's based on your gross receipts, so your total income, and it's tiered, either a $5,000 grant, a $15,000 grant, or a $25,000 grant.
Okay. I had some viewers ask if I could ask you some questions about just, not necessarily related to a small business. So most of us have converted our homes into school and workplaces. Are there any tax benefits for doing that this year?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So if you're self-employed and you have a home office that's used regularly and exclusively for work, you've always been eligible for deducting that on your tax return. Now, if you're a corporation, which you could be a one-person S corporation, in order for you to deduct that home office, you need to have a reimbursable expense plan, an accountability plan, or you need to be leasing it. So basically your corporation leases a room from you as yourself. For the student areas, I have not read anything about the student areas. And it used to be that as an employee, like if you work for a company and you're using your home office, that you could deduct those expenses on your individual tax return. And that deduction went away in at the end of 2017, in 2018. So the only way you'd really get that deduction would be by applying to your employer and saying, hey, I've been using this home office space. Can you help me out with some of my expenses? And they can turn around and say, sure, let's create a reimbursement plan. And if it's the correct type of accountability plan, whatever they pay you for that home office use is tax-free on your end, but they have to set up a formal accountable plan. Otherwise, they can reimburse you for expenses for your home office, but it may be taxable income to you.
Okay.
I might have created more questions than answers, but.
No, that's okay. We're all together. As we close out, what have I missed? And can you leave us with some happy news, perhaps?
Let's see. It's 2021. I think that's some happy news, right? I think that if you are listening to this and any of this is something that like you've been kicking around your head or you've been wondering about, I want you to know that you did a really good job. Like you survived something that was really, really hard and continues to be hard. And I've had so many meetings with small business owners who have felt alone, who have been beating themselves up, who have felt, like there's been so much stress. And I continue to have those meetings. And I want to tell you, and I have those moments too. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in a really dark place because I had not realized, and I felt dumb for not realizing, that I had a bunch more COVID decisions I had to make related to my business. And I felt like I'd been making them for 10 months. But in tax worlds, I'd never started a tax season paperless and virtual. I finished one paperless and virtual, but it was really hard to go through like all those, like I had downsized my office and I don't have a full-time receptionist anymore. And like, I found myself having to make all of these new decisions. And I was so upset because I felt like I'd already made so many. If any of that resonates with you, know that you've done the hard work. Like now we're just making tweaks. Jeff, my husband, has 10 employees that we've been working really hard to keep safe and keep our clients safe for the past 10 months. And occasionally something new will still come up. And you have new tools and resources. You've had new experiences that are making you a better and stronger leader and business owner. And while it's been hard and while it's felt like you've just been fighting, I want you to know that you've been more than treading water. You've been keeping your head above water, and you've really come a very long way. So I would just encourage you to look up and maybe write a list of the things you're proud of that you faced and accomplished last year. For us, that really helps when we're fighting the hard to remember, actually, we fought harder. And your fighting harder was last year. And just keep going. There are a lot of resources available to you. One that I want to mention is the Small Business Development Center, the SBDC. They are fantastic. They are just a total gem of a resource. They're completely free to you as a business owner. So lean on them. There are resources like Heidi out there, resources like me, your banker, your lender, your friend. We have to be careful, socially distanced, but you are not alone in this. And I'm proud of you. Like, you've survived. And if you did not survive, I'm proud of you too, because you exited gracefully through something that was horrific and very hard. And I think I want you to know that you've got people like Heidi and me in your corner, and we're rooting for you and cheerleading for you, and we believe in you. So I hope that helps someone.
Okay, you got me in tears.
Okay.
I
I'm gonna start.
I want to mention that Megan Likes is not just the owner of Megan Likes Accounting Company. She and her husband own 3 small businesses. And so the fact that you just gave such grace to folks out there struggling each day is really wonderful. You had prep time for this. You've spent an hour with me. What a community service you've been. So folks,
Well,
please.
and we have 5 and we lost 1 to COVID. So
Okay.
I just want you to know that, like, even somebody who maybe you think is smart, like I feel dumb. I'm wrong all the time. I've already been wrong like 10 times today because SBA changes their mind. But even somebody like that, you know, it's not your fault. Like, you didn't do this.
Yeah.
We lost 1 too, and that's okay. And we're going to find a new way in 2021 because it's a new year. And I'm feeling really hopeful this week.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'll need to learn to count. 4.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to correct you, but I wanted to be sure that people knew we lost 1, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did. That's an important point. So I've been talking with Megan Likes. She's the owner of Megan Likes Accounting Company. If you have questions for her after this interview, please do put those questions in the comments and we'll do our best to get those answered. Megan, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, my pleasure, Heidi. Thank you.